let's talk about Super Mario as a separate entity because,
Yes.
boy, so we talked about living in bubbles. I
Hmm.
lived in a bubble where I kind of thought that this movie wasn't going to do too great because I saw people complaining about Chris Pratt online. People I knew personally said, maybe I'll watch it on streaming.
Yeah, yeah. I was hearing some of the same things, and but then as it started getting closer and closer to the release, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, it looks pretty good,"
I mean, it's a Mario movie. How can we not go
Yeah,
see a Mario movie?
yeah, yeah.
So, so let's talk a little bit about this from a box office perspective, and then we can kind of bring up the things that beclowned.
Hmm. Yeah.
There seems to have been this narrative the last since 2020 that, or I should say, expectations have been kind of lowered for the box office almost. And then you have movies that come out that remind people, oh, right, yeah, it isn't that we have superhero fatigue, it's we have bad superhero fatigue.
Yeah.
It isn't that there isn't a market for children's animation. It just has to be good children's animation.
Yeah, yeah, which I don't think Disney has figured out either one of those out yet.
No. Now, as far as the overall box office, Mario is actually slightly hard to compare to other movies because it dropped on a Wednesday instead of the typical Thursday night to Friday release.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Darn you, making more money but making our mathematics difficult. How dare
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Come on.
So we are currently looking at a full week of release as of yesterday.
Hmm.
Uh, let's talk about some of the movies that has beclowned. Um, Ant-Man, Quantumania. It is only 20 million behind Ant-Man Quantumania
For
in
one
total
week.
box office.
Yeah,
Which I'll remind you that Ant-Man Quantumania cost, let's see here, 200 million versus
100
100
million.
million for Mario, and has been out for 2 months versus 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also mildly clowned Puss in Boots, but I think honestly part of it was that people didn't necessarily know they wanted Puss in Boots 2, Shrek 6.
Yeah.
I mean, you recall my review at the time. I was like, "Wait, this movie's good?"
Yeah. And hey, Ninja Toe, good to see you.
Yep. Let's do some more embarrassing comparisons here.
Yeah.
Lightyear.
Oh God.
Stop. He's already dead.
Sorry. Sorry.
Lightyear. Its entire worldwide box office cum came in at 218 million. Super Mario has made more than that nationally in a week.
Yeah. Uh, yes, and Lightyear deserved to fail because it was a terrible movie.
Yes, Daniel actually is our Disney Plus correspondent, as in the guy who keeps subjecting himself to Disney Plus things for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Godspeed.
Yes.
um,
Uh,
go Strange World.
I have not subjected myself to that thing,
Strange World. Worldwide gross total 69 million.
Oof.
So that means that you could add both of these movies together, and Mario Brothers has surpassed them both by a very healthy margin after a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could then further add. Actually, no, you can't quite add Encanto yet. Give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. 69?
So, yep, 69 million.
Yeah.
In fact, let's pull up our calculator here. So it's like, we'll just do round numbers.
Yeah.
69 plus 231 for Encanto plus 218 for Lightyear. Um, we are only 70 million away.
Oh wow. And
Well,
yeah, happy early birthday to you, Mad
yes.
Studio.
And I will say, I thoroughly enjoyed that Dungeons and Dragons movie. They kind of shot themselves in the foot saying stupid things in advance of the launch, so it is worthy of your time.
Yeah, and oh, 30. Oh, well, we've been there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well, on to other people's foibles
Yeah.
rather than the cruel march of age. Um,
Yes.
so basically, you could take any two Disney animated features from the last couple of years that were actually released to theaters, add them together, and Mario made that in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And don't you know that people in Nintendo are just like, "Whew."
yeah,
this isn't 1993 again.
yeah. 1990, that 1993 Mario movie had some very interesting effects on Nintendo. Um,
Yeah.
uh, where I think that they actually, yeah, they stayed completely away from anything more complicated than maybe a Saturday morning cartoon here and there.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess now Pokemon's different. Pokemon's almost like a subdivision. It isn't like a Miyamoto project.
Yeah.
Actually, do you remember like 5, maybe 10 years ago that there were rumors of Netflix working on a Legend of Zelda movie?
I do remember that. Yeah, and they were talking about gender swapping Link.
Were they? Okay,
Yeah.
that would be typical for a Netflix adaptation.
Yeah.
But but what I heard was that this is how like protective Nintendo is. I heard that those plans got canceled because Netflix talked about them while they were still in development.
Ooh.
I forget where I heard that though. So file that under DB heard that in a live stream somewhere. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Nintendo is notorious for guarding their IPs, so that doesn't
yes.
surprise me.
So good on them.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ninja says that's the power of Mario. That's very true. Like Mario as a concept is like you can just wrap your head around it immediately.
Mhm. Yeah.
That now, what's weird about this is that Mario has entered the culture war because of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah, which it is kind of funny to call it a culture war when it seems like the one side is saying, "Stop preaching to me and just make movies that I could take my kids to and have a
Mhm.
good time."
Yeah.
And the other one is saying, "No."
Yeah.
Um, Now, from everything I've heard about this, and Daniel, I'll be curious to see if you had heard anything about this. That would you say that the Mario movie is like a perfect movie? Like, or like, from what you've heard about it, because neither
From
of
what
us
I've
have
heard
seen it.
about it, no, I haven't heard that it's perfect. I've heard it's good, not great, and
Yeah, I think this might. So I'm just going to be fully honest here.
mhm,
I've I can't think of a single Illumination movie I've tried to see that I really liked. Back when I was a substitute teacher at a special ed class I was subbing for was showing Despicable Me 2 while the
mhm.
teacher was out, and that was entertaining enough compared to teaching children.
Yeah, yeah. Despicable Me 2 was. I've only seen like the first two of those, and then I've seen Minions, and then I actually recently watched Rise of Gru, which was that one was good. I mean, but yeah, I'm kind of like you. I haven't watched an Illumination movie and felt the way I did like the first time I watched Toy Story.
Yeah, oh, that's right. They also did Sing. Sing was all right.
Sing was all right. Yeah.
Uh, I would say that Illumination is in that category of perfectly adequate kids movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And yeah, hey, good night, man. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it, Matt Studio.
Yep. We'll hope to see you again next time.
Yeah. but yeah, The other movie that, of course, the other movie I thought of when I heard that they were doing Mario was Angry Birds, because I had seen Angry Birds.
Was that an Illumination movie?
I think it was.
Let's find out because I actually really I think that was a Sony one. Let's find out.
Uh,
Angry Birds movie. That was Columbia Pictures and Rovio Animation. So that was actually yeah, that was Sony.
oh, Sony. Okay.
Which I was gonna have to eat some bird there, as it were, if I was because I actually really enjoyed Angry Birds.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched it, I didn't get it, and then the second time I watched it, I enjoyed it a little bit more.
Yeah, as a Holy Ninja sums that up very nicely. Illumination is a film studio that is fine making good kids movies for better and for worse.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
It is interesting how it seems like Universal has this two-tiered animation system now, where it's
Mhm,
like DreamWorks is coming out with the stuff that's mildly challenging, like your How to Train Your Dragons,
mhm.
um, your Puss in Boots Last Wishes, and then you have like Illumination making the drivel.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say. Actually, no, a lot of it is drivel. I feel confident saying that.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's room in this world for both.
Yeah.
And and now where this has gotten culture worry is, of course, the comparison we just made. Hey, Disney seems to have lost the animation crown.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, do they possibly have? Do they possibly have a? Now they didn't have an easy to access 2022 animation comparison, but
Oh, okay.
but uh, but like the big animation movies last year, you had Rise of Gru, Minions, which
Yeah.
also made $1 billion, and
Yeah.
I don't think you had anything else because we've gone over how Encanto about how Lightyear and Strange World completely bombed,
Right.
and even
And then
Encanto was a flop.
yeah, and then when did Seeing Red come out? That came out last year, didn't it?
It did, but it went straight to Disney streaming.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It had like a very limited box office deployment.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's yeah, I think this sort of reminds me of the time in the '80s when Disney was it, Disney was really struggling, like
Yeah.
'70s and '80s, before Michael Eisner got in there, and at the time, there was a former Disney animator, and some of you will
Oh,
probably know the name, Don Bluth.
yep.
And he left Disney because was getting too corporate for him, and he started his own animation studio, and he was really going at it with Disney. And I think can't remember which movie it was that he did that actually did better than a Disney movie.
I'm gonna. It might have been Fievel
Might have been fun.
or
Yeah,
Land Before Time. I know that was like on my constant replay when I was a kid.
yeah. And yeah, Illumination Films are consistent moneymaker studio for Universal. DreamWorks has more recognizable name. Yeah, that's true. And of course,
Yeah,
DreamWorks that's Spielberg.
yeah. Also, I should mention that it's not like DreamWorks has been some sort of animation art house. They've come out with a lot of crud for straight to Netflix, like a Boss Baby TV show and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But but they are like the studio that will try. They're experimental,
Hmm.
like things like Rise of the Guardians, for example.
Which I
That
have still not seen yet. I still need to watch that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
The thing I notice is that when I go to SakuraCon, I always see somebody who's cosplaying as Jack Frost from that movie. And I don't know if that's the same person who's been doing it for like a decade or if people just like how that character looks.
I hate to say it. I'm gonna go with the former rather than the
Yeah,
latter.
probably. Although I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but anyway, now where this is kind of interesting is that people were raking the critics over the coals for saying this movie is incomprehensible. You have to know Mario to understand it. It's kind of funny, like to hear things like that. Those are objective critiques, but so many people know Mario that this movie is going to make huge amounts of money and be beloved despite those objective flaws.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, good lord, my grandparents knew Mario.
Right. Y- Nintendo has had to, for many years, tell people to stop referring to video games generically as a Nintendo out of fear of losing their copyright or their trademark.
Yeah. Yeah.
That almost happened to Kleenex at one point, the people at Kimberly Clark.
Oh, really? Hmm.
Yeah, I forget what they had to do to keep their trademark, but it was a near thing apparently.
Oh, wow.
Um, the other thing is that it's not like Mario Brothers is some sort of deep lore thing where
Yeah.
uh, uh, where like there is a story to adapt necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a plumber who goes to a kingdom, and he's of course, and I know this isn't the plot of the movie, but in the games, he's there to rescue a princess.
Yeah. Apparently, the shift has been that, and this is something I heard pointed out that makes enough sense.
Yeah,
Peach has been a playable character in the various games for long enough that she can't really function as the damsel in distress we're used to from the 80s and 90s games.
yeah, yeah,
But everybody loves Luigi,
yeah,
so make him the damsel.
yeah. Well, and it makes more sense that that Mario would have to rescue his brother rather than just some princess he doesn't know.
Yep. But so yeah, it seems like despite some of the technical flaws, this movie is a roaring success, and good on them.
Yeah.
And I think so. We talked a little about the culture wars. I have seen people say, "Don't be so happy that a movie isn't woke that you just accept mediocrity."
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, but the problem is we've had so many bad movies lately that it's like even a movie that's marginally good, we're like, oh yes, 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 very good.
Please,
Yeah,
please,
yeah,
please, please,
yeah,
please.
yes, yes, yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about Sonic the Hedgehog 1. It's
Hmm.
like this is like a very average movie, but average and just kind of harmless fun is like
Yeah,
exemplary almost.
yeah. uh, and yeah, Ninja Toast is Mario is a Saturday morning cartoon series. There will be the occasional deeper story, but in general, it's not meant to be taken seriously, like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
Well, like just a perfect example of how non-story driven Mario is. Square Enix and Nintendo teamed up and they made Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo.
I remember that game. Yeah.
Uh, then Nintendo they parted ways on the N64 because the cartridge didn't hold enough memory for Square Enix to do what they wanted to do. So
Mm.
Nintendo developed Mario RPG, no, not Mario RPG, Paper Mario as a sequel slash replacement on the N64 in house,
Uh,
and that one was still pretty story based. And then they had the GameCube version of that game,
mm,
which was the Thousand Year Door, I want to say, which was more the same.
uh,
But Nintendo is so allergic to plot and storyline that they have been slowly whittling that away with every subsequent release to the
yeah.
point where the makers of the games had to fight hard. Like this like weirdness of it. They're like, oh, well, that Goomba can't have a name, even if he's in your party. He's just a Goomba. All Goombas are fungible, and they had to argue. Like they had to fight hard to find ways to differentiate even party members who were of the various races of the Mario world. It's like, oh no, this Babam here, he doesn't he lost his wick, and we're calling him Billy because it's not his actual name, but he had his amnesia, so he doesn't remember who he is. So it's a nickname that another character gave him, or something like that. I watched a video about it a while back.
Yeah.
So, so the idea that Nintendo would make a plot or would be at the helm of a plot light, crowd pleaser, simple movie, that's actually arguably a better take on Mario than something with a complex character journey would be.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, certainly better than the aforementioned 1993 movie,
Yes.
which which had arguably had a good concept. And I think we talked about that last week. Had a good
Yep.
concept to it, but it had nothing to do with Mario.
It had the fundamental flaw of being called Mario Brothers.
Yes.
But now the other thing that I'll say is that between this and The Last of Us doing gangbusters over on HBO,
Hmm.
begun the age of video game movies has.
Yeah, after sucking for so long. Yeah, and it just says most of the most story moment in a mainstream Mario game is Mario Odyssey that ends with Peach rejecting Mario and Bowser's Bros. I never played Mario Odyssey, so I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it though. But
Yes.
so I think we've discussed this when we discussed the movie itself. I feel like between this Top Gun, even Avatar to an extent,
Hmm.
I think that we are just gonna I think we're gonna see some sort of pivot away from movies that aren't fun being dressed in fun clothes.
Yeah.
And I think I just came up with that phrase there. And I think that's like the biggest thing is that like Encanto. Encanto is a perfectly fine movie. It is exactly what it purports to be on the tin. Like there's not you basically
Hmm.
know it's about the family madrigal. There's family conflict. If you're like me and you're sick of stories where you can use the phrase generational trauma to describe it, you stay away.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, Ant-Man and the Wasp really being like a movie about Kang and Janet Van Dyne,
Hmm.
from everything I've heard, and just being nonsense. It's like don't pretend to be a superhero movie about Ant-Man. Make the Wasp Quantumania.
Yeah.
Actually Janet wasn't even the Wasp in this one. That was her daughter. Make
Yeah.
it old lady Quantumania.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so again, we keep seeing the clear evidence that if you just make something that people can enjoy,
Yeah.
they will they will break down the door and go to a movie on a Wednesday, which is not a traditional week or movie day.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially non-summer too.
Yeah, mind you, in April some schools are on spring break, but still that's not huge.
Yeah.
And I think it's day one box office bigger than Shazam's first week
Oof,
or first weekend at least.
man.
So yeah, I think it's proof that you just again you make something fun, people will come and pay you money.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe this will be the beginning of the Nintendo cinematic universe.
We shall see.
Yes.
Somebody did point out that you could have a Smash Brothers movie as the culmination of that.
Mm.
Speaking of things that, speaking of kind of the opposite strategy of let's just keep doing what we've been doing.